The real end of the universe will not end with a Big Bang, nor will it be swallowed by a black hole. The real end of the universe is much stranger than any science fiction movie or novel, much weirder. I am not joking. This is all calculated by scientists with serious physics formulas step by step. You may think that such outrageous things are far away from us, but in fact, the sun, moon, and stars we see every day, and the stars in the sky already contain clues to this ending. We currently feel that these stars seem to be hanging there forever, right? But have you ever seriously thought about if one day all of this completely disappears, what the universe would become? Please note that I'm not talking about hundreds or thousands of years, but in the distant future of trillions of years. By that time, not only all stars will be completely extinguished, but even time itself may lose its meaning completely. What is even more outrageous is that the physical laws that we take for granted, those physical laws, might also completely fail. Don't worry. Next, I will take you to see what the real end of the universe will look like. Hello everyone. Welcome to the universe world. To be honest, the era we are living in are definitely the luckiest generations in the universe, because the universe is now full of bright stars. It is like a super luxurious light show. It is completely free for us to see. However, there is a problem you may not notice. The universe wasn't born so lively. What is worse is that it won't be so lively in the future. Stars, strictly speaking, are actually a luxury in the universe, how to say, because the fuel they consume, hydrogen, was produced by the universe at one time. Once produced, it will never be added. It's like when the universe was born, was allocated a certain amount of fuel. The more fuel burned is how long it will live. The lifespan of all stars have already been arranged by the universe. In the 1930s, there was an Indian-American scientist, Subrahmanyan Chandrasekhar. He made a very surprising discovery. He found that the fate of stars had been strictly stipulated from the day they were born. Was strictly stipulated. What a star will eventually become, it doesn't depend on its brightness, or how many planets it has. It only depends on one thing, is its weight. Medium-sized stars like our sun will expand into a red giant star in its later years. Everyone knows that, right? But few people know that when the sun becomes a red giant, the Earth will not be directly swallowed, but will be pushed away by the intense light radiation, pushed to a farther orbit. Then T will become a lifeless and lonely planet. Later, the sun will slowly disperse, the outer matter slowly blown into space, leaving behind a small, ultra-dense core, which scientists call a white dwarf. But the really powerful is those super huge stars. And stars with particularly large masses will completely explode in the last second of life, turning into a supernova. At the moment of explosion, the energy it releases is even more than all the stars in the entire galaxy at the same time. What is even more bizarre is that the cores of some giant stars are instantly compressed during the explosion, turn into something called a neutron star. A little bit of matter of this star, the size of a spoonful, can weigh over 1 billion tons. So heavy that you can't imagine. There are also some even bigger and crazier stars. At the moment of explosion, the density of their cores becomes even more outrageous, so that the surrounding space is completely deformed and produce the most terrifying thing in the universe. The scene of these stars' deaths, if you can see them up close, would be the most spectacular and terrifying scene in the universe. Looking back, the stars we see in the sky, but who could have imagined their endings could be so crazy? But what is even more terrifying is that these crazy star explosions are just a small episode before the end of the universe. The really weird thing is that after all these stars have gone out, will slowly begin to appear, is that there are only black holes left in the universe. Black holes, we've heard a lot about them, and think it is a terrifying celestial body that can suck in anything, right? But the really weird thing is that black holes don't actively swallow anything. It can even stay there quietly without doing anything. Doing nothing for billions of years, or even for thousands of billions of years. The reason why black holes are black is because its gravity is so strong that even light cannot escape. But what many people don't know is that black holes don't stay black forever. It will evaporate and disappear. This sounds a bit mysterious, but it is true. Everyone knows Stephen Hawking. He discovered that black holes are not actually black. They actually radiate energy. This phenomenon later, scientists named after him, Hawking radiation. Simply put, is that in the vacuum next to the black hole there are always countless pairs of particles. Sometimes half falls into the black hole and half escapes. The escaping particles, they will take away some of the black hole's energy. But don't get me wrong, this process is incredibly slow. The larger the black hole, the slower it evaporates. For example, the supermassive black hole in the center of the Milky Way to completely evaporate. Scientists estimate it will take at least 10 to the 100th year. This is much longer than the universe's current history of 13.8 billion years, much longer. In other words, the vast majority of the universe's future, the main characters will be these extremely boring and lonely black holes. They quietly float in the dark doing nothing. Occasionally, they encounter some planetary fragments or white dwarfs. They may suck them in as snacks. But most of the time, they just float there coldly, like the loneliest ghosts in the universe. The most bizarre thing is that when these black holes evaporate to the last moment, they won't explode violently or a big flash, but they evaporate gently and silently. They suddenly disappear. When the last black hole in the universe disappears, there will be no sound left, or any traces. At that time, the entire universe will finally become a completely empty and quiet place. At this point, do you think this is the end of the story? Sorry, I have to tell you that the end of the black hole era isn't even the weirdest stage. The next thing I promise to tell you is 100 times more outrageous than black hole evaporation. Many people think that after the black hole finally disappears, the universe will be completely empty. Actually, it is not. Although it looks empty, there are still some more fundamental things left, such as protons and electrons. You may think they are too small to matter, but they are particularly important to the universe, because all atoms and the foundation of all matter are these invisible little guys. For a long time, scientists thought that particles like protons were stable and would never break down, but later scientists found that things were not that simple. In the 70s of last century, there were two very powerful physicists, Howard Georgi and Sheldon Glashow, who studied a grand unified theory and derived a conclusion that shocked the entire physics community, that protons may not be stable. They would decay on their own, but their lifespan is too long. Scientists estimate that the lifetime of a proton is at least 10 to the 34th year, or more than 1 quadrillion years, which is unimaginably older than the current age of the universe. But the universe is not in a hurry. It has plenty of time. As long as you give it enough time, even if the probability is very small, eventually happen. So in the distant future, the last protons in the universe will start to decay and disintegrate one by one. By that time, in the universe, there will be no intact atoms left, only a nearly perfect vacuum and the thinnest radiation. Can you imagine that scene? An universe without atoms, stars, or galaxies, even without the most basic particles. That would be the real end of the universe. But do you think it is the end of the world? Definitely not. There are even more bizarre things to talk about. The things that really bother scientists is just beginning to emerge. We always say, vacuum. Vacuum, you may think, is a space with nothing in it. Actually, it is not in physics. Vacuum is not truly empty, but a space containing energy fields. In other words, what do you think is empty? There are some invisible and intangible things. The key question is that the vacuum of the universe now may not be the most stable state. What does it mean? Simply put, it is like a small ball temporarily stopping on the hillside. Although it looks fine, but as long as there is a small fluctuation, it will fall and roll to the bottom of the valley. Scientists suspect that the vacuum of our universe is this unstable vacuum that may fall at any time, called metastable vacuum. If this is the case, things would be a bit scary, because some accidental quantum fluctuation in some corner of the universe suddenly falls into a truly stable true vacuum. This situation is called vacuum decay. Once vacuum decay occurs, the true vacuum bubble it produces will expand rapidly at nearly the speed of light and instantly swallow everything, completely erasing the old state of the universe. The most exaggerated thing is that this change is not an explosion or impact or any warning. It is just that the laws of physics are completely rewritten in an instant. That is to say, all the rules we are familiar with now, such as gravity, electromagnetic force, and even how atoms are composed, all these things we take for granted will be completely changed. A new vacuum state may even completely exclude atoms, and the existence of any complex structure may not even allow the existence of time. This means that wherever this vacuum bubble reaches, even existence itself may be meaningless. You may think such a thing is so far away from us that we don't need to worry. But the most terrifying thing is the vacuum decay. Scientists say it can happen anytime, anywhere. Maybe in some distant corner of the universe, or maybe inside a particle right in front of us. There are no signs, or any warning signs. But don't worry, the probability of this happening is extremely low. But after all, the universe is infinitely long. It will happen once. The real shock is that when the old universe is completely erased, this newly formed vacuum bubble may give birth to a completely new universe. Yes, in theory, our universe, this universe was born out of the ruins of the previous universe. Was born. The universe is constantly born and destroyed, and then destroyed again, repeatedly. Isn't it weird? But if one day the universe runs out of the power to restart, you might be curious. At that time, what will be left in the universe? Scientists tell us that the universe will truly become completely empty, cold and quiet, and become a completely static space. But the weirdest thing is, in that extremely empty vacuum, there is one thing that cannot stop. That is quantum mechanics. It sounds quite complicated, but in simple terms, is that space is constantly fluctuating randomly, Even if there is nothing in the universe, space itself is still constantly shaking. Scientists have discovered that if you are willing to wait long enough, quantum fluctuations may even randomly create anything out of nothing. And this anything is a real anything. No kidding. A grain of sand, a drop of water, or even a complete brain can theoretically suddenly appear in the empty universe. You heard me right, a complete and thinking brain. Physicists call this bizarre phenomenon Boltzmann brain. The name comes from a physicist over 100 years ago. He proposed that in a completely random world, as long as you wait long enough, strange events with extremely low probabilities will happen. In the infinite future universe, this crazy phenomenon is not only possible, but almost certainly will happen. What is even more outrageous is that scientists believe that the consciousness and memory that appear out of thin air and complete brains may be more than those produced by natural evolution. What does it mean that in the distant future universe, the majority of consciousness may only appear for an instant and disappear in an instant? If this is the case, it would completely subvert our understanding of existence and life. And if the universe has no change by then, only instantaneous consciousness, born randomly. Do you think time still has meaning? In fact, scientists believe that time does not exist independently. It relies on change and difference. When the universe is completely unchanged and no differences, the concept of time itself may cease to exist. Simply put, at that stage, time may not end or continue to pass, but lose its meaning of existence completely. The universe will eventually become a place without past or future. After saying so much, you may suddenly feel that human beings in the face of this let's say that our entire human civilization combined has only been a few thousand years so far. But the stories we just talked about the universe are measured in trillions or billions of years. From this perspective, human beings in the universe is just a blink of an eye. But if you think about it carefully, have you noticed a particularly bizarre fact? Although humans are so small and short-lived, we have the wisdom to understand all this. The universe has spent such a long time from the birth of stars to their complete extinction, to the formation of black holes and their evaporation. This whole super long story has given birth to a small species like us. To observe, think about, and even predict its future. In other words, the birth, evolution, and end of the universe seems to have arranged a grand performance. And we humans are the lucky audience who happen to pass by, and maybe even the only audience. We were born in a golden age of stars, not too early, not too late, just in time, and we even understand the plot, and even predict what will happen next. Do you think this is lucky or unfortunate? Perhaps the true meaning of our existence is that we have the opportunity to understand the universe and ourselves. No matter what the universe will become in the end, at least at this moment, you are living in a where you can understand these things. We can't decide the end of the universe, but we can decide how we view it.